get right to it today with just a little bit of brief promotion at the beginning of the end. I'm tired of talking about this stuff. You're probably tired of hearing about it. Couple of things. Definitely go check out the Zilosophy YouTube channel. Got a great new PSA up there that I did for the Lean On Me project with a new character, Willa Fail, and also old school Bobby Kid. So really great, hilarious stuff, funny educational content. That is supported by the GoFundMe, which is free Zilosophy content for heroes, kids, and families. That's still up. You can donate there. Of course, this is another golf episode, so I'm going to shamelessly continue to promote my book, if I can get the camera right here. Oh, here we are. Zilosophy on Golf, available on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. And you can email me at info@zilosophy.org for a signed copy. Today's guest, well, it was recorded last week, so apologies for the delay, but the guest is Todd Ohlmeyer, a classmate of mine from Pepperdine University, a member of the 1997 National Championship team. It's been a long time since I've seen him. We've stayed in touch, but we haven't been able to talk face to face, even virtually, in a long time. So it was great to see him and reminisce about the golf house. I hung out there a lot at Pepperdine. We had Jason Gore, Todd Ohlmeyer, Mike Walton, Kevin Marsh, Carson Mooney, Matt Kanabe. Some of those guys that Ohly mentioned on the podcast I hadn't thought about for many years. So if you're out there listening, guys, please contact me. I'm going to tag you guys when I post this. For those who don't know Todd Ohlmeyer, he's not just a member of the 97 National Championship team at Pepperdine, but he's also coached at St. Edward's University, or St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas for 10 years. He recently left that position. Before that, he coached at Coastal Carolina, although he was there before DJ, so he takes no credit for DJ's rise to stardom, but maybe Ohly helped to lay the groundwork. He's also got an incredibly famous dad who passed a couple years ago from cancer, but Don Ohlmeyer was a pioneer in sports TV. He was the first producer of Monday Night Football. He laid down his own money to bring the Skins game to TV and actually made a lot of money because he bet on himself, which is something that we talked about a lot. So Todd now is running Recruiter Elite, which is golf.recruiterelite.com, and that's a website that has tons of resources for young kids who want to try and go play golf in college, that they can figure that out. So obviously the landscape there is changing more and more, which probably means you need more direction rather than less direction. So that's it for the intro. Coming up next, Todd Ohlmeyer of Recruiter Elite. All right, here we are with Todd Ohlmeyer, my old buddy from Pepperdine, member of the 1997 National Championship team, golf team at Pepperdine. Right? Hi, Todd.
Yep. Yeah.
Ohly, I call him. If you hear me calling him Ohly, that's why, because we've known each other a long time. Teammates with Jason Gore on that team. People will be familiar with Jason from the podcast and also from the forward of my book. And so we're going to talk to you about the landscape of college athletics. Nothing's changed in the last 6 weeks, right?
Not at all. Been pretty crazy, obviously.
So you coached at St. Edward's in Texas for 10 years, up until 2018.
Correct. Yeah, I started coaching. I actually got my start at Coastal Carolina.
Oh, right. I remember that.
Right after, usually the next question was I there when Dustin was there? And it was right after Dustin. He was working with Alan at the time, so he was around quite a bit, and is back working with Alan now. So I was officially got my start at Belmont Abbey, a small D2 school outside of Charlotte, then went to Coastal, and then was fortunate enough to get the job at St. Ed's, where I was coach for 10 years at the D2 level. And we had some really good years, had some not so good years, but all in all, it was a great experience. And I were catching up a little bit beforehand. My dad I was thinking of maybe getting out of coaching so I could be home more with my kids and my wife. And then my dad passed away in September of 2017. And shortly after that, I said, I think I'm ready to make a change. And so now I work in a business where I help educate families about the college recruiting process.
Yeah.
Walking them through trying to play specifically college golf right now.
Well, let's switch gears immediately for a minute. Let's talk about your dad, because people
Okay.
might not know your dad's a pretty famous guy, pretty famous TV producer.
Right.
And executive, I should say.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about him and maybe some of the lessons that you learned from him while he was still here.
Yeah, I mean, super successful guy. Amazing when thinking about all the things that he was able to accomplish. He was basically the first producer for Monday Night Football from a golf perspective. He brought the Skins game to television. He got sued a number of times over that because people said, "Oh, that's my idea," and he said, "Well, I didn't create the actual game Skins. It's something that everyone's been playing forever. I just got people together to do it." And he bet on himself on that. Basically, was down a bunch of money when that first year that it went on the air. He bought the airtime himself on NBC. He was just lucky that he was right and it was successful. So
wasn't he involved in Saturday Night Live at one point too?
Well, when he went into entertainment, he did work on. He was overseeing all of NBC West Coast, which was the entertainment arm. So like when he was there, he had the famous deal with Norm Macdonald, but also was part of helping greenlight Friends and Frasier and ER, Will and Grace, and a bunch of other shows that were super successful, kind of loaded up Thursday night as must-see TV. And so that was kind of his executive hat there. But, one of the things that he kind of taught is hard work and perseverance. I mean, he got his start as an amazing story in that he was a student at Notre Dame, and ABC was in there to do a football game. And he just got a job laying cable that week, and then saw the director in a bar that night, bet him over a game of pool. If he could beat him for a game of pool, would they give him a job for the rest of the season, covering the Big Ten? And so he won the game, got the job, and then when he was done with college, he went right to work. And he actually graduated from Notre Dame, left school on Friday, did not attend his graduation, but his parents did, and he started work on Monday. So
amazing.
Yeah, and so I mean, he was a hard worker.
So the theme I'm getting from all of this is he was always willing to bet on himself.
Yeah, that too, 100% on that.
Is that a lesson you brought when you were a coach, coaching college kids? So like, believe in yourself, bet on yourself. Not literally in the college game with college athletics, but the mindset of betting on yourself.
Yeah, the mindset. Like one of the things that Alan, my boss at Coastal, always talked about was really taking ownership of your game, and that from a golf perspective, but that can also lead to just about anything. Taking ownership of everything that you're doing, from your daily routine to how you treat your family, to your work. I mean, that's great to sleep in every day.
That's why I wrote that book, right? I mean, like, it's about taking ownership, like you said, being responsible for being the best person, the best golfer you're capable of being on that given day.
Yep.
I just came back from the range. I playing tomorrow down in Naples, and hit every club pretty well except driver. And it's one of those things where you're like, all right, well, I just didn't have that today. I tried my best with it. I certainly hope I don't swing driver like that tomorrow and I actually play. That would be horrific. I might leave it in the bag. But some days you gotta do that, right?
Yeah. It's funny when you're talking about golf. I was thinking about the other day was, I think the only time you and I played golf together was at Matt's wedding bachelor party weekend.
Yeah.
which was an interesting day.
Shout out to Kanabi. Yeah, it was me and the Pepperdine golf team and a
You,
couple of
me, Kevin Marsh, and Todd Andrews, and it was a fun afternoon.
yeah, we caused a little havoc out on the course that day, but we certainly took a hard game and made it fun that day. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's one of the cool things again about golf is like it's such a hard game. It can teach you so much. And one of them is like even when you're not playing well, it's supposed to be fun. How do you find joy in the midst of chaos?
Right. Yeah, I think that's also the frustrating thing is no matter how good you play, you're always like, well, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, and you can always beat yourself up over it if you're looking at it from that perspective.
Sure.
Which,
yeah, I often talk about. I just based on what I often talk about, so I don't remember what I was going to say. We'll continue. A little brain thing there, but we're going to go on. So you coached for 10 years. What are some of the, you talked about, I think I saw in your bio, you had 15 team titles. What was that experience like working with kids and teaching them to take ownership of their game and have that trickle over into their lives of taking ownership of their lives as very young adults?
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience and something that I missed the day-to-day interaction with those guys that I coached. Obviously, I'm now getting more day-to-day interaction with my own family, which is great.
Yeah.
But it is different and being, in that environment of trying to help people and was awesome. And, trying to make sure that they're understanding that while I'm trying to teach about golf, like I'm really trying to set them up for later in life.
Yeah.
And that's what's the beauty of college athletics is it's really, a microcosm of what the world is like. And so trying to keep these teams going, I think is really important, and hopefully they find ways to do it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. This program in particular has been canceled. They're trying to save it. There's fundraising going on to try and save it, but obviously the landscape of college athletics just drastically changed. We don't even know when the major programs and schools are coming back to play again. But a lot of people might not know that the runoff of this is that a lot of small programs across the country are just disappearing left and right.
Yeah, I mean, even beyond that, it's a lot of small schools are disappearing left and right. I mean, I think there's been at least 3 schools that I know of that have closed that were all over 150 years old in the last couple months. And really in the last 2 weeks, 2 of them have. And Concordia up in the Portland area was one that announced they were going to close their doors. They announced, I think, in January that they were going to shut down. But so, yeah, it's unfortunate and it's happening. And it'll be interesting to see how things transpire here the next couple months, because if football doesn't happen, that's going to be a huge killer for a lot of athletic departments.
Right. I mean, that funds
yeah.
most of the department, right?
Right. I mean, like LSU, I think I read it was LSU in their most recent report that they released back from 2017. Like the football program brought in 52 million, and all the other sports combined lost 24 million. Now, I might be wrong on those exact numbers, but it was something pretty extreme like that.
Right. So let's get into the philosophical question. How do you save small college athletic programs? I heard an interesting idea on PTI a couple of weeks ago. Mike Wilbon was saying you travel a lot less. That can cut down a lot of expenses. You play more locally and play the teams around you, so you're not trying to present yourself as this big program and sell yourself. We travel all over. We play in all these tournaments. No, just be the best in your region, and then you'll get a chance to go beyond that. Do you think there's merit in that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that, and that's a lot of Division II is they try to be a regional sport. I mean, they focus on, when it comes to NCAA championship allocations and bids, it's broken out by the region. Whereas if you take D1 golf, they just rank the top I guess it's 80 some odd teams that make it to, I forget the exact number off the top of my head right now, but the top 80 or some odd teams get it into nationals. And same with basketball, it's the top 64 or whatever, now 68 with the playing games.
Right.
But, those are on a national picture. With D2 on the regional level it's the top 8 or top 10 or top 4 from whatever makes up that particular region. And there's 8 regions. So,
yeah, baseball is a good example of that too. Even for the big programs, it's all regional.
Right.
Play-in tournaments.
And so from a golf coach's perspective, a lot of programs do just play regional. They don't travel outside their region very much because you have to play a certain number of opponents within your region in order to make sure that you're NCAA eligible. And if you play like the minimal amount of regional opponents and then you have a terrible event, which is kind of what happened with us. If you have a bad event one year, it can really affect your regional ranking and then cause you not to get into the national tournament.
Right.
And so, we were able to, at St. Ed's, we traveled a little bit more, but that was through fundraising. We had our budget, and I knew what, and Chris, who's there now, and Ryan Murphy, who was there before me, knew like, here's what we had, and then we just raised if we wanted to go beyond that. So trying to stay regional is a huge way to save money when you don't have to put 25 soccer players on a plane to go somewhere versus hopping on a bus. I mean, that's an enormous savings. And so there's definitely a lot of value to that.
Right, but from what you're saying, that's not going to save St. Edward's golf program because
no, they're wanting.
So what might be some of the things that could save a program like that?
Well, I know in the St. Edward's case, they're trying to endow all those programs that they lost. They lost men's and women's golf, men's and women's tennis, or not lost. They're cutting men's and women's golf, men's and women's tennis, men's soccer, and then they moved cheerleading from NCAA sport to club. So they want to endow all those programs, which is going to take a lot of money to do. When you're factoring in, they want it fully endowed, you're factoring in salary, operating budget, which includes travel and recruiting.
Sure.
It's a lot of money. But so I think also looking at the overall numbers and costs of how teams operate, and then also looking at, how that affects the university's landscape. Most athletes are on a partial scholarship. I saw from the Tennessee Martin athletic director was talking about his track team has got about 60 to 70 athletes that are on $2,500 for scholarship because they're all on partial scholarship. Yeah. So somebody else is paying that other $18,000 or $20,000 for the student to go there. So, it's kind of that discounted rate that they're getting, much like an academic scholarship or something else. Right. Looking at on how that actually affects everything. With St. Edward's men's soccer, their players next year that were coming back, we're going to be paying $28,000 on average, $28,000 per player to be there. So, that translates into a lot of money if you add it for 35 to 40 players over 4 years. I mean, that's, yeah. I can't do math that fast. My Pepperdine degree is not that great, but it's looking at kind of the bigger picture.
I certainly hope that colleges take the opportunity to look at a major problem that I think, and I'm not necessarily going to ask you to comment on this because I don't want you to get in trouble with any of your friends, but I think college tuition, we can all agree, is pretty well out of control all over the country. Yeah. And it needs to be fixed. It's not a sustainable path. There are very few schools who have taken a leadership role and started to lower tuition, but that is clearly the exception and not the rule. And how are we going to have an education system, when you got to spend $250,000 to go get an education that most of the things that you're going to study, it's going to take you a while to get the return on investment.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm still working in college athletics, but that was one of the things that I was having a hard time with was trying, to tell or push somebody to spend that kind of money on it. If they came to me at St. Ed's and say, hey, I can't afford that. They call it the school's too much. I never once tried to push it on them because that, it is super expensive schools right now, and they need to figure out a way to make it more affordable. And, what they're saying is cutting programs or cutting some other stuff is obviously going to be part of that. But the D3 models seem to be working pretty well, where there are no scholarship, and they have tons of programs that families are willing to pay to be a part of. And so I think you might see more of that, where instead of cutting the programs, you start cutting back on scholarships in order to save some money.
Well, yeah, and then that's a interesting thing to go back to bet on yourself. If you want to be a professional golfer and you want to compete at the college level, a lot more kids now are going to have to come up with the funds either from their family or loans and grants to bet on themselves that, hey, I think I'm good enough and I think that there's value in this. You and I went to Pepperdine. It was very expensive then. It's nothing like it is now. I could never go there now.
Right.
Still, when I left, I had so much debt that was just, when you're 18, 19 years old, you're like, screw it, debt's debt, whatever. You don't think about the number and how you're going to pay it back. But there was a lot of value in the Pepperdine education. I'm not saying that. It wasn't really necessarily as much the education, although the education was great. It was the opportunity to connect with people like you and Matt Kanabe and Jason Wan, Jason Gore, and, the connections and friends that I made were way worth what I spent.
Right.
But is that enough to sell kids going to school that, hey, you're going to meet great people and it's going to have value for your life and your career? We hope.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to that. And I always joke that just like kind of you said, neither one of us could probably even get into Pepperdine now. It's gotten to be a much better school than when we were there. But yeah, you are paying, I think, for that experience and the relationships that you build. But what price is it?
I hope there's a market correction.
Investment.
Part of that market correction is these institutions need to reevaluate what education is and what college athletics is and how it all fits together. That many of them, and I'm not talking about your school or Pepperdine or any specific school, but many of them have just turned into bottom line, money driven institutions. And that's just one small piece of the entire picture of what college is about, what education is about, what college athletics is about. So I hope from this there can be some good that comes. And I don't think it's in cutting small programs, but everybody's got to make hard decisions right now. There's no doubt.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting too, kind of along those lines. But I do wonder if we're going to eventually see this where there's like the Power 5 conferences. It's like Power 5 conference, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, because they are in a league of their own when it comes to athletic spending.
That whole thing has become ridiculous too in the power conferences. You got Maryland playing in the Big Ten. You got BC playing in the ACC. These schools jumping all over the place when they used to be regional conferences.
Right.
They're so money hungry. They're just going wherever because they go to the big conference where they can get bigger TV deals. And again, I don't necessarily blame them for going after money, but like, where are your priorities? And I think what's happened to all of us, whether you're a college or an individual, we've all had to sort of reprioritize and look at how are we doing things and is this the best way? And, hopefully colleges can find a better model moving forward that's more sustainable for everybody, so that people can get educations and have the experience and not be saddled with debt and not have to spend $250,000 just to go play college golf because you think you can be a pro. You're going to have a lot of kids skip that and just start playing on the lower tours to try and make money and work their way up. And I don't know, you would know a lot more about that than me about which avenue is better. I suppose it depends on the individual, but.
Yeah, I think it somewhat depends on the individual, but I also feel like, playing it at a college golf, like you're getting great experience against really good competition. And then you're having this degree to fall back on, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a lot of value in trying to play college golf. And, like Sahith from Pepperdine, like he's top ranked amateur in the world, and he went there for 4 years instead of turning pro. So I do think there's a lot of value in trying to play, but I also know that sometimes like school just isn't a kid's thing, and maybe they need to just go and try to play. The cost of school right now, it's not like it's saving you that much money one way or the other, because you're going to be spending quite a bit if you're paying entry fees and traveling. And I tried it for a real brief period for about a year, realized like, hey, I'm not that good and I need to go and start working. But it was glad I got the chance to do it. But
I watched all you guys struggle with that, the whole team pretty much. Even Gore, who was on the podcast recently, he made a lot of money playing golf, obviously, but he also grinded it out and sweated it out a lot too. It's a really hardcore lifestyle when you have to play well to make a living.
Yeah. It's a whole different thing. I mean, it's just like playing, Sunday golf with your family versus tournament golf in college. I mean, there's this one coach, I won't say his name, but he was telling me a story about one of his players who he finally said to him, I think I need to, hire your mom as an assistant coach, because you tell me you shoot 67, 68 every time you play with her, but you can't break 75 in a tournament for me. So, there's a huge difference between playing just recreational and fun golf versus.
I talked with Gore about it a little bit on the pro level. I wonder what's going to happen to all those guys that are, ranked 200 to 500.
Yeah.
They're not making any. Some of them have small sponsorship deals. Most of them aren't making any money right
now. Right. Yeah, you're starting to see a few of them.
What's going to happen when they come back? Who in those lower groups is going to survive and be able to continue on?
Yeah. I mean, there are a few mini tours that are playing somehow. I'm not sure what they're doing or how they're making that happen. But yeah, I mean, it's not like there's a lot of opportunity to go out there and make some money right now as golf.
Can we also talk about how sad it is for us personally? The Pepperdine golf team is an amazing team, the best it's been since you guys played in '97, and then they got shut down. And they had super high hopes.
It was super disappointing I'm sure for Michael, and they actually played in Austin last year at the NCAA regional. And so I had the team over for dinner one night, and just a great group of young men, and got to go out and watch them each day play at UT Golf Club. And they qualified for nationals. And Michael had said, he's like, we're really good this year, but when Sahith comes back, and then we've got William coming in, he's like, next year could be something special. And that was a year ago right now. And so felt terrible for him, but there's some things like your book will talk about is like there's things you can control, and this is one of those things that you can't.
And life and golf, things don't always go the way you'd like them to. That's just the way it is.
I forget which quote it was. There was one of them, I think it was the Chip Beck one. I put a little bookmark in it. Pain and suffering are inevitable in our lives, but misery isn't an option. I liked that one because that's one of those ones where you can, continue to beat yourself up over it.
Right.
But there's nothing you can do about it. So why
choosing to be miserable? I mean, that's the awareness part of like, I'm choosing to be miserable because I'm not playing as well as I think I should be playing, or whatever. Is that really worth it? I mean, I have something, I've been doing this Deepak Chopra 21 Days of Abundance challenge that someone sent me. That's been awesome. And there's a meditation every day. I'm just looking it up now because the quote from today is, there's a phrase every day, and it says, I move through my days lighthearted and carefree, knowing all is well. I mean, wouldn't that be great to just go through life like that? Like when things don't go your way, it just didn't go your way. You don't have to make up a whole story about it. You can just say, I'm going to choose to be carefree and see what happens next.
Yeah. And I think, going on that meditation and mindfulness is something I've tried to incorporate, and I've gotten away from it the last few months really, and have noticed the difference between when I was setting aside that 8 to 15 minutes in the morning as part of my morning routine.
Makes a
So
huge difference.
yeah,
The mantra in this one too, and I've been swimming in the pool for like 20, 25 minutes most days, and I just say the mantra over and over again as I'm swimming to just like
yeah,
bury it into my head so it's there when I need it. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I think, for any younger golfers or lower level golfers out there, if you want to get an advantage over most guys and the old school traditional types, I mean, I know everybody's into exercise and working out and all this stuff, and have mental coaches, but you don't really need that. What you need is like a yoga practice and a meditation practice,
right,
really, put you above everybody else, because there's still a lot of people in the golf world, because it is such an old school sport, that think that's all BS and crap. But I've seen the benefits for me in my life and my golf game. When I'm meditating and I'm calm, I play better. When I'm doing yoga regularly, I have better core strength and I'm more stretchy, so old guys like us don't hurt their backs playing.
right.
I mean,
Well, I think like Rory's talked about that a little bit too lately, where he's kind of bought into that and starting to do it now, which will probably then obviously trickle down and translate to more
sure.
younger golfers, much
Great.
like Tiger with the fitness thing, got everybody fit. Maybe Rory's going to get everybody thinking a little bit differently.
Good. I think that's good. Number one for him, because he was known as sort of a tightly strung guy, and I think for him, he's so good, and has such an amazing natural ability, and he works so hard that like that's the one piece missing for him to just be where everybody thought he could be or should be or whatever. That like just be more mindful, be more, and do those practices, I think could help his game a lot. And then, like you said, in turn, help the entire game and like make everybody see. I think you're also starting to see a lot more Eastern Asian players, right? So they're bringing more mindfulness to the game because that's just part of their culture.
Right, for sure.
And I think that that's a great thing. You're seeing a lot of young girls from over there. They had a great piece on ESPN that ran a couple of years ago that they just reran during all this, about this young girl in this tiny little Eastern Asian country that came to America and is playing all these tours. I mean, there's a really cool thing going on in golf that I wrote about in the book, which is that golf, which was this known as this old school, old white male game, has now in the last 10 years become so diverse, that it's a really cool human story. When Augusta National, which was known as, the flagship of old school white men, now they're hosting these amateur tournaments for young girls, because they know
Right.
that's where the growth of the sport is. I mean, it's really smart and also really cool that we're changing and that the world's evolving and becoming more inclusive. Even golf is now inclusive, and that was never the case when we were growing up.
Right. Right, for sure.
I mean, I didn't have a dad with a high-profile job like you, so I had to sneak on to the local country club
Right.
to play when we
Yeah,
were.
I was definitely lucky in that regard. Both my dad and my stepfather was very big into golf, and so whether I was visiting my dad or I grew up with my mom and my stepfather, golf was always a regular part of our family routine, no matter where I was. And so a lot of great memories of those Sunday afternoons going and teeing off. Usually, but we'd play a lot. But I mean, the one rounds I remember the most were the 4 o'clock, 4 hours before, 3 hours before sunset, and trying to rush and get them in. Or
Yeah.
I had kind of a moment last weekend or last Friday, where I just went and played on my own, teed off at 7:10, walked 18 holes, was done at 9:30.
Love it.
And
That's probably played great too, I would imagine.
yeah, I was pretty pleased. I was happy with how I played, and it made me remember when my dad and we would go and tee off at 6:30, play 18 holes and have breakfast, and then go play at 10 o'clock with a bunch of his friends.
Yeah.
And so
what did you learn from playing with him and during those times?
That as good a putter as I thought I might be. He was always a better putter. But no,
good lesson.
Yeah. But no, I think, kind of focusing in on, always competing and being in the match. You know, my dad never played when he played golf, it was never for a ton of money. It was always just for, they played 2-2-4, 2 for the front, 2 for the back, 4 for the overall, or maybe 5-5-10. But I mean, it was not anything crazy, which wasn't always the case at where we were playing.
He's obviously a very competitive guy, given the career that he had.
Exactly.
Couldn't have been successful.
So that was his thing, was if he had you could ask Gore or Madsen or Walton, especially Walton. Walton witnessed it a ton of times. But, how many times my dad would make a putt on 17 or 18. And, like a funny story about his competitive streak.
Yeah.
It's probably about 2015 or so. We were out visiting, and so Mike Walton and I and my dad and one of his friends go out to play, and we're playing a match where you're partnered with each guy every 6 holes. And Wally and I were partners on the last 6, and we were already 1 up, and Walton makes a hole-in-one on 17, and my dad was like pissed because he now knew he was 2 down, and unless he was actually getting a stroke, unless he made this like 50-footer, which he lipped out, he really wanted to make the 2 for 1 to have. But that was just a kind of a peek inside where he was super competitive and wanted to win. And
what about stories from the 96, 97 Pepperdine teams where you had Wally and Gore and all those guys? I mean, obviously you won a national title, so that's a great story.
Yeah.
Any lesser known fun stories from that crew?
I mean, I'm not sure that
ones that are appropriate for a public.
Yeah, but it is funny, and not to disrespect our team. I do feel like our team junior year with Kevin Marsh and Carson Mooney as part of it. It was all the same group, same guys, but then also those 2 guys, was even deeper. But I was, when I got into coaching, I reached out. I actually had 4 coaches in my 4 years at Pepperdine. And so I reached out to a couple of them and just asked some questions about it. And both of them said, look, like getting some competitive walk-ons is a huge help to your team. And I was one of them. Look, I was a good player from the state of Connecticut, but I wasn't a superstar. And I told people this when I was recruiting as a coach, and then now with what I'm doing now is like, I went to Pepperdine and would not change my experience, would not trade it for anything, because it was an amazing opportunity. But I was the 4, 5, 6, 7 guy, and more like the 5, 6, 7 guy most of the time. And I could have gone somewhere else and played a lot instead of playing in the 15 or 16 tournaments, maybe I don't even know, that I played when I was at Pepperdine. It was a little frustrating senior year. Kind of felt like I could play a little bit more, and kind of had some shoulder issues here and there. But
hey, look at the bright side. At least you were ahead of Kanabe on the depth chart.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience, and I've lost my train of thought from where I was going with this question.
That's all right. We were talking about the team and stories from that. I mean, I can just talk about it. I remember, hanging out with all you guys because Kanabe was my dorm mate freshman year, so I got to know all the golfers through that. And then as we grew older and everybody had houses, we would all hang out together and parties together. And like you said, you guys all came from different backgrounds from anybody that I grew up with. But the cool thing is that you guys were just normal guys like everybody else, right? Like golfers, and grew up in more affluent families, but we were all the same when we were hanging out. There was no hierarchy or any BS like that with you guys, which was I think there was cool.
Yeah, and I think within our group there was a bunch of differences in the way people were raised and brought up, and I think that was a really great experience and opportunity. And there's a couple things that happened, especially I guess it was junior and senior year, just interchanges or exchanges with some other players on other teams, and one hearing like player talk about how all their teammates, they hate each other and they don't do anything together and they don't like each other. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine that experience.
Like the Boston Celtics last year with Kyrie. You're just watching this team that has so much talent and they don't like each other, so they
Yeah.
play bad every night. Like, and that's a good point about why you should play college golf, not just for the college experience, because you get to meet all sorts of different people in all walks of life and you get to understand different backgrounds, but also you learn that camaraderie of playing together. Golf is an individual sport most times, unless you're playing a little two-man match or something. But college golf is really unique in that it's a team sport and you learn how to pick each other up and make each other better, or you get jealous of each other and your egos get in the way and you make the team worse. You
Yeah.
have a choice.
Right. Well, and kind of along those same lines, and I think was one of the reasons why we were super successful that last year and even junior year too. But I do remember, I can't remember who told me this. It might have been Wally, but we had a dual match against somebody and against Loyola Marymount, and I remember, I think it was Wally that told me this story that the guy he was playing with is like, hey, it seems like your team is really close. Like you guys really care about each other and are really good friends. And we were, and I think that definitely
That makes
helped
a
us.
huge difference. I mean, on any team. I mean, you guys would have never won the national title if you weren't that close. Sure, you had the talent, but the fact that you actually liked each other and cared for each other and wanted to see each other do well, like that's a
Yeah.
big advantage over a lot of other teams.
Right. Right.
Um, and then poor, I still look back to that poor Gore with, had the team title and the solo title right in his grasp, and it just slipped through his fingers. I mean, what a crushing,
But
but a
like,
great lesson in life.
yeah. But to his credit, like he makes the putt, and the first thing he turns around and says is, "Did we win?" And then that night, like I wasn't in the lineup, but I flew out to watch that last day, and we went out and had a great time. And there was not one moment where he was like depressed or down, and he very easily
And
could
we
have
both
been.
know him well enough to know it was eating him up inside. How can it not?
Yeah.
We talked about it when we talked on the podcast. Not that, but just in general, when you have a chance to win and you don't win, you never let it go. But
Right.
again, that speaks to the team environment. The team win was so much more important to him and to everybody.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have both for sure. And you guys would have loved to have him win it, because that's another feather in your cap for the team too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, it's
he's
like,
doing okay. He's gotten over it well. Nice little job for the USGA. I think he's starting to. I saw a live Instagram with him yesterday and some other guy that I didn't know.
yeah, I watched a little of that yesterday too.
Starting to lose. It seems like he's starting to lose it from being locked in his man cave so much.
Yeah, probably.
I should do a wellness check on him after this.
Yeah, I ran into him. I did a guys golf trip with my buddies when I lived in Charlotte. And we did it for years. Then we took a little break, and then they started back up, and I couldn't go because I was coaching. And then, one of the like silver linings after coaching, I was like, well, shoot, now I can start going on that golf trip again. And this past February, we did our trip to Pinehurst, and I walk in and I see these USGA signs, and I'm like, texted Jason, I'm like, are you here? And he's like, I'll be there tomorrow. So we got to hang out for a little bit, just, for about 20 minutes. He was pretty busy, and I was there with a bunch of buddies that I don't see very often either. And, but yeah, he seems like he's doing well and enjoying what he's doing.
See him, and he's the same guy he always was, happy, enjoying life. I mean, he's not, we talked about it on the podcast. He's not, it's not all bunnies and butterflies. He's a person too, and has his own struggles, whatever they are. But the really cool thing about Jason is you never know that when you hang out with him. It's just always fun and laughs, and it's great that way. And that was the way of that whole team, and why, I was supposed to graduate in '96. I graduated in '97 with you guys because it took me 5 years. But it was really cool.
That was my biggest regret in life, was why did I graduate in 4 years? I should have taken at least 5.
No, I did it right. It cost me a lot more, but That last year was really cool because I had made a lot of friends in that class. My girlfriend was in that class, and um, it was cool to be there when you guys won. I don't think were there other national titles that were won while we were there? I don't remember them.
I think that was it. Well, baseball might have been your
Baseball was
freshman
the
year
year before I went there. They
before
won
you got there.
the national title in
And
baseball.
then they won water polo again that fall after we won.
Those guys were that was an eye-opening experience going to so we always from our dorm we were always the guys because I'm the East Coast guy, we always got right next to the keg and became the keg pumpers. So here we are, I'm a freshman, like 145 pounds, surrounded by these giant water polo players at their party pouring them beers. I'll just never forget, these guys are so big and they fight basically water polo. If you've never watched
Right.
it, they wrestle while treading water.
Right.
They are the strongest people on earth. They have to be.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was just a funny experience. I didn't know. I mean, I grew up outside of Boston, near Connecticut. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
never.
water polo. I didn't know anything
No, I didn't.
about it. I watched it on the Olympics every now and again. That's it.
Yeah, now it's a big sport. There's two guys from my hometown. I think there's two guys from my home. I know one for sure on the Olympic team that play at USC and maybe at Pepperdine. I'm not sure. I know one of them was at USC.
The Olympic coach that coached at Pepperdine, is he still coaching?
He is. It's been a coaching kind of going back and forth. Jack Coker was the coach there for a little while. But yeah, I think Terry Schroeder's back there as the coach again. I'm not sure
And
though.
Dunphy finally retired from volleyball,
Did
right?
he?
I think
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
He was there when I was there. I went to go try and catch Michael, the Pepperdine coach. We never hooked up. I left
Yeah.
him a book, but I ran into Coach Dunphy and gave him a book and reintroduced myself. He's another great. I mean, there's amazing to have these obscure sports for us as East Coast guys, but like, national champion level sports of volleyball and water polo. We didn't have a football team, so we had to watch the other sports.
Right.
They were
Right.
so good, man. It was so cool to watch those guys.
Well, I mean, not to kind of tying this all in, but like last year, I wrote this down because I was kind of knowing what we were talking about. There are 141,483 Olympic sport athletes, which is basically outside of those main football, basketball type sports, but playing college D1 college athletics, and they're contributing 3.5 billion in tuition and fees. So you do have to look at how that is affecting a university's budget. If you're starting to cut these sports, you're cutting a lot of these tuition paying players who are going to go somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking
but kids aren't going to go to that school if they're not playing that. So a lot of the times kids aren't going to that school because they're going to that school, because they're playing that sport. If they weren't playing that sport, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I don't think administrators outside of the athletic department realize how true that is. Like, I don't know how many of my players would have come to St. Ed's if they weren't playing golf when I was there. Right. I think they loved their time there and they're glad they went, but part of that's because of being on the golf team. And I might have ended up at Pepperdine if I wasn't playing golf, but if I wasn't playing golf, I might have tried to go somewhere else.
Yeah. I ended up at Pepperdine despite my lack of athletic ability, and I ripped through the lower levels of intramural basketball leagues. I never played the top levels. I could have been like one of those bottom tier guy at the top level, but those guys were so overly competitive and angry and fighting all the time. I'm like, this is intramural sports. What the heck are we doing? So I played with all the kids who didn't care, and so I was one of the better players. And it was fun.
I played a men's hockey league in Charlotte, and a guy yelled at me for not sliding to block a shot. I'm like, I'm not wearing shoulder pads or a face mask, and I got to be at work in 7 hours. Like, I'm
cool with that.
I'm not sliding to block
Thanks
a
for
shot.
the invite. How about Pepper? Here's a funny story. Pepperdine had this really incredible phys ed program. You had to take 4 PEs, So I took surfing, golf, and hiking. What did you
Yeah.
take?
Along with, so I only had to do lifetime fitness, like that one you had
Oh,
to
because
take
you were an
freshman year.
athlete?
And then because of golf, yeah, I didn't have to. I did play on the club hockey team my freshman year, which I don't know if you remember. It was only there for 1 year,
I don't
but
remember. I
yeah,
do remember the golf class. We used to just go on the front lawn and hit golf balls. It was amazing. And the coach was pretty decent for people like us who like didn't really play golf. You know, I picked up
right.
things. And sometimes the maintenance truck would drive by and we'd have a target to hit at, like the like the golf ball collector. um, but no, it was really fun. And then surfing was crazy. I it was 8 a.m. on Wednesdays, and I was like,
Yeah,
why did I sign up for this class? Why am I get to get up at 7 o'clock? And then once
yeah.
you're in
How
the
did you go?
water, you're like, oh, I know why. This is pretty amazing.
Although, I mean, it was almost impossible to have classes on Wednesdays when we were there, so it's kind of hard that you had it. Um, I just remember always having Wednesdays off almost when I was
Yeah, I
there.
don't know. I don't remember my schedule. I think, yeah, that was one of those things where I think I had that class and then maybe another one and was off for the rest of the day or something.
Yeah.
But you know,
Going back to Coach Dunphy, I mean, talk about an amazing person. Like I got to take a couple classes with him actually, because he taught one concepts of coaching class, and just
oh
kind of
wow.
hearing how he was that.
I said, oh wow.
Yeah,
And
it was a great
no, he
class because
taught that.
obviously, yeah, he was an amazing coach and communicator, and really, yeah, I mean, basically his whole philosophy was, and what I try to do and did when I was coaching is how you treat other people. And you know, he was awesome. It was a Tuesday Friday class, or you know, Monday Thursday or whatever it was. But he would teach one day, and then he would have one of the coaches at Pepperdine come in and speak to the class the other day. And so you got, you know, 15 or 16 other coaches to come in and just
Yeah.
talk about how they coach and why they're coaching, and kind of what their thoughts are on certain things. And then they would take questions from people asking about how they would handle certain situations. And
Had some great coaches then at that time too.
yeah.
Basketball coach, I'm spacing on his name, the guy that just came back.
Oh, Lorenzo Romar. Yeah.
Lorenzo
Yeah.
Romo.
He was, when I took the class, he wasn't there,
Oh really?
um, he wasn't there yet. But still, like, I mean, I'm sure Marv continued to run the class, but he was a great guy, and somebody that I think back on my experience there, someone I'm really happy I got to meet and spend time with, because he would have us up to his house. We'd play ping pong, and
Wow.
you know, like twice a semester.
That had to
He was
be
really, yeah. He lived up in Malibu Canyon, or
for
not
those who are
Malibu Canyon.
watching or listening and don't know, Marv Dunphy we're talking about was the USA volleyball coach forever, and also the men's volleyball coach at Pepperdine.
Yeah,
And
yeah, just
just an amazing guy and an amazing coach. One of my talk about amazing coaches. One of my biggest regrets at Pepperdine. And I don't remember if you were there that year. It might have been my freshman year, but John Wooden came to speak at convocation, and I blew it off and slept in.
oh yeah, yeah. That must have been your freshman year, because I would
That
remember.
was not a great decision looking back. Would have loved to hear what that guy had to say in person. It's nice to have all his quotes and notes, but it would have been really cool to see him actually deliver a
Yeah,
speech.
yeah. Well, you definitely would get a lot different different take out of it then versus now too, through
Sure.
your
No, I mean,
experiences.
the take then was like, I don't need to listen to this guy. I mean, how silly of a
Big old
take.
guy, you know.
I mean, it's one of the greatest coaches of all time in any sport. Probably knows a
Right.
few things that you
Yeah.
might want to learn, right? So let's go back to, we're getting close to an hour here, and we'll kind of start
Yeah.
wrapping up. But you know, as someone who now sort of mentors and guides young athletes and coaches into the collegiate process, what's some advice that you've always given that you'll continue to give, and like maybe what's some new advice given how quickly things are changing that you might want to give to some young golfers out there?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the new advice thing that I've been starting to tell my clients is like, if programs are closing and schools are closing, that's reducing chances, which means you're going to need to maybe adjust where you think you sit. So, like when you were a regular student, you had your reach schools, your target schools, and your safety schools.
Yeah.
You kind of need to look at that scale now and maybe either readjust it or put a little bit more effort and emphasis on your safety schools, because those might become more of a target school. I mean, if you just take St. Ed's and those 3 other schools that closed down, right there's probably about 30 to 40 golfers that are looking for a place to play now, that weren't 3 months ago. So
that's good advice, not just for athletes, but for all kids that are still thinking about going to college. Something that I try and put out there a lot, and kids that ask me is like, look, go to a community college, go to a state school, start small. Maybe you want to grow into something big, but you don't want to start, building up debt so fast. It's not really a fun experience. And maybe there's better options at these smaller schools where you can get better access to teachers, better, communication with a coach, because it is a smaller program, more hands-on. Maybe it's actually a better place for you on top of being a more economically responsible place.
Yeah, I mean, going back to our experience at Pepperdine, I remember, we all had to take that public speaking class, and my freshman year I took it, and we had a girl in the class who was a transfer, and her speech was on how she was going to get the Pepperdine degree for half the price because she went to community college for the first 2 years and got a lot of classes out of the way at a much cheaper price. And so, that's definitely
way
way to consider and look into it. Yeah.
Way ahead of her time. Find that girl. We need her to get out there and give that speech over and over again.
That's right.
What about the
kind of going back?
You've always given that you're going to continue.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that, if you're a good player, coaches are going to find you no matter what tournaments you're playing in. But one of the things that they're always going to look at is to try to figure out whether you're a good fit for their program and how you interact with your fellow competitors, tournament officials, rules officials, your family, your parents, how you act on the golf course, how you act once your round is done and you walk into your car. Like, coaches are watching that, and I don't think sometimes student athletes know that. Again, Alan, he had me, he'd be like, hey, when you go watch this kid, I want you to watch from either a shot ahead or a shot behind, because once a coach shows up on a golf course, the college golfer starts like trying to look bigger and act differently, and where they might throw a club if a coach isn't there, they're definitely not going to if he is. And so if you're watching from the trees or from the green instead of the fairway where he's hitting shot, you get a little bit better feel of what they're like. So I do think your conduct shouldn't be an act. Like, it's trying to develop into the person that you want to be, and coaches are always watching. I mean, I've had
which is a great unplanned spot for a plug for Zilosophy on golf. You young golfers out there, read my book. Again, the whole point is it will help you play better golf, becoming more aware, visualizing, practicing patience, acceptance. You will play better golf. Much more importantly, it will make you a better person. And that's really what we need in the world now more than ever, is everybody to be their best. So use golf as an opportunity to learn how to be your best, right? I mean, that's pretty much what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And that's how I got into Pepperdine. I learned, you talked about hard work from your dad. I played in a really solid high school basketball program, and they drilled into our heads the value of hard work. I wrote my Pepperdine essay on it. I talked about it on my phone interview. And I really think that those are the things that got me in more than I had good grades. I had decent SAT scores, and sure, I was from far away, but I think that type of stuff, learning from a sport how to be a better person, really allowed me to get to Pepperdine, which allowed me to do a lot of other things.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to wrap it up, it's all about, what you said at the beginning about, we talked about your dad. Bet on yourself.
Yeah.
And not just as a golfer, as a person. Bet on yourself that, look, I just made this video, this funny video for a local mentor group down in Sarasota called Lean On Me. You can see it on the Zilosophy YouTube channel. And it's these two characters, Willie Fail and Old School Bobby. I just sent you the link as we started this. You can
Yeah,
watch.
I haven't seen. I saw you promoting it on
All
your
about,
Facebook.
listen, you matter. Everybody matters. We need everybody to realize that they matter. There's no castaways in the society moving forward. We need everybody to bring their best to the world. So how do you do that? Use golf, use other sports, use other activities to learn how to become a better person so that you can do your best. You know, we get impatient with each other and we start yelling and pointing fingers. Well, you think this and you think that. Is that the best version of me, calling you out for the things that I don't think you're doing well at? No. It's to say, you know what, Todd, I love you. You're a good guy. This is what I think. And maybe, you know, here's something you can work on. That's how we help each other.
And kind of going along that talk that you were just saying, where you're saying it to somebody, it's also a lot of times people are saying that to themselves in the mirror. And that's the other one where kind of how you're talking and being to yourself. It all
starts there. And, you know, I write about it in chapter 16, where it's called Critic's Choice. You know, how many times have you said unspeakable things to yourself on the golf course? And how many of those times have you actually played better after that? Almost never. You know, I meet someone every once in a while that goes, well, I do. All right, great. Keep beating yourself up. I don't know what to tell you. But, you know.
They're probably not even being honest.
No, of course not. I mean, I've said things, and I talk about this a lot when I give talks. I've said things to myself on a golf course that if I ever talked to anybody else like that, I would have no friends and my family wouldn't want to hang out with me.
Right, right.
But we talk to ourselves like that, like it's no big deal. I still do it when I miss a shot. A lot less harsh than it used to be. I'll just like call myself a dummy for not paying attention and focusing on the shot. And then I usually laugh it off and move on and restore like not beating myself up. But, you know, I mean, that you're right. That's a big one. We need to give ourselves a break, that we're humans. We're going to make mistakes. That's why golf's a great sport. No matter how good you are, you're always going to make mistakes.
Right. That's why no one shot 54 yet. So
yeah, well, Kim Jong-il's dad shot like 30-something once, right? Awesome, man. Dude, it's been so good to catch up with you. Hang on for a minute so we can say a proper goodbye offline. But anything else, any last words you want to say before?
No, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was great to chat.
Why don't you plug your website?
Yeah, it's just golf.recruiterelite.com. We've got about 100 videos, scripts, and templates that walk a family through the college recruiting process. I've got some people that just use the website and the app. It's a web-based app. It's not in the App Store, but that use that just as their way to get through and navigate through the process. But I'm also available where people hire me for more individualized one-on-one consulting. So but it's golf.recruiterelite.com.
So if you're a young golfer or you know a young golfer, you know, check out that website, and there's a lot of resources out there that can help you. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, kind of to the point, the last minute plug on that too is I do a free 30-minute phone consultation, just kind of learn more about your situation, tell you a little bit more about what I do and how I can possibly help, and kind of help get you started on your own. But then just always there if you want to talk more.
That's great, man. I love that. I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. You know, kids need leadership, and they need people like us that are trying to be our best so that we can give them the tools to be their best. That's what it's all about. So thanks for playing today, and we'll talk to you soon. Him at golf.recruiterelite.com and check him out for all your needs about figuring out how to find your way into college playing golf, especially in this interesting landscape. The book is Zilosophy on Golf. available on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. Check out the YouTube channel, Zilosophy, on YouTube. Great new PSA. All kinds of other stuff coming soon. Let's see, what else? Oh, the GoFundMe. Go to the GoFundMe, which is free Zilosophy content for kids, heroes, and families. Thank you for listening. There'll be more coming at you soon. I got a lot more coming, a lot of ideas and people scheduled. I'm just a little burnt out because I haven't been sitting at home forced to do nothing like many of you have. I hope you're safe and everybody's doing well out there. I hope you're taking the time you need to rest and the time you need to work, whatever mix that is. I think I've been working too much, so I've been taking some more rest time lately. I hope this stuff is helping you, and please let me know if you have any questions or comments. info@zilosophy.org or @Zilosophy for all on social media. This is Z. I'll talk to you soon. You're welcome.